Welcome to you all. My name's Stephen Hornsby. I'm the director of the Canadian American Centre and the co-host of this international conference on ocean technology in New England and Atlantic Canada, co-hosted with the Maine International Trade Centre. And this was a conference that was very much a collaboration between Jeff Bennett of the MITC, who unfortunately cannot be here. He's off in Brussels at a trade show, and my colleague Stefano Tiarina, who put this together with Jeff and invited many of you to participate. Before I hand things over to Sebastian, I just want to acknowledge our support for this conference. As you know, we can't do these things just on the university dime, and we've had most generous support, which I'd like to acknowledge. TD Bank, most particularly, they supported a conference we put on 4 years ago, and they are funding much of this conference. The consulate, the Canadian consulate in Boston, has also provided funding, as has Maine Sea Grant, and Paul Anderson, the director of Maine Sea Grant, is on the program this morning. And finally, I have to acknowledge the U.S. Department of Education. The Center gets a Title VI grant, which supports international education throughout the United States, and we are a national resource center on Canada, funded by the U.S. Department of Education. Finally, I'd like to just acknowledge Betsy Arnson, who's standing in the doorway there, and Stephanie Crosby, who really did all the heavy lifting for this conference, worked on the logistics and put it all together, and I really appreciate their help. Well, without further ado, I want to hand things over to Sebastian Belle, who's the moderator for this first session. Sebastian.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Well, what a great turnout, and what an interesting and exciting conference. And thank you all for coming today. What a better way to start an exciting conference like this than to talk about one of the most exciting sectors we have in the region, aquaculture. The fastest growing food production sector in the world. Now think about that for a second. I just said that aquaculture was the fastest growing food production sector in the world. That's quite an amazing statement to make, and I will follow that by making a statement that many people will be probably horrified or shocked by, but not in my generation and not in my children's generation, but probably in my grandchildren's generation. We will be growing as much or more food in water as we are in land. That's a phenomenal thing to think about and to hear about. And you're going to hear why that's going to be the case this morning from our panel. We got a great panel. We're going to start with a kind of an industry perspective, and then we're going to go to the research and development side of the house. Ours is a field which is based on science and technology and knowledge, so the linkages between the business sector and universities and research and development is very close. We need help from the research and development community, and I think if there's one thing that you take away from at least our panel, and I suspect this conference today, it is that we are not isolated. We are a region. There are linkages between Canada and New England, and particularly in the research and development field, we need to take advantage of those research linkages and not duplicate each other's work. We need to coordinate what we're doing and try and help each other out. We have limited resources. We need to use those effectively. So we're going to start with Mike Schmurder from Cook Aquaculture. Cook Aquaculture is a tremendous story. They started in 1985 with 1 cage and 5,000 fish, and they now employ over 2,000 people around the world. Really their hallmark as a company is that they work very hard. They are very vested in the communities in which they operate in. We've really seen that in Maine. We've seen them give back to those communities and say what they and do what they said they were going to do. And they have built a team internationally that's quite amazing. In fact, the company and the evolution of that company is so amazing that at the Brussels Seafood Show, which is going on right now, Glenn Cook, one of the two brothers and the father of the family, that founded the company was recognized as the Intrafish Person of the Year. That's quite an achievement. Intrafish is the preeminent trade publications group in aquaculture internationally. And when they picked Glenn, the interesting thing was they said that normally this is a very tough pick. There are a lot of talented CEOs in our field, and we have a hard time making that choice. In the case of Glenn Cook, it was a no-brainer. There was no debate amongst the jury in terms of whether or not Glenn should be nominated or not. And the reason for that is the speed with which he has grown that company, and the dedication that the family has shown to the people who work for them and to the countries that they work in. So without further ado, Mike Schmurder, VP for Operations with Cook Aquaculture.